pleased to take this opportunity to announce our new defensive coordinator, Brian VanGorder. You know, in this process of hiring a staff, for me, now going on 24 years, there are so many different things that you look for, but for me, it was pretty simple. The first thing I wanted in this position is a great teacher. I think first and foremost, when you're talking about you know, the ability to bring together you know, our defensive players, you need the ability to communicate and to teach. And Brian is one of the very best teachers, if not the best teacher that I've ever been around, and I go way back with Brian. So first and foremost, he's a great teacher. I think the second thing that stands out is he understands player development. And so anyone that I want to be around on a day-to-day basis has to understand the important principles of player development and bringing them along and really understanding how important it is to get those traits out of our players. They're not ready-made. The players that we bring here to Notre Dame, we have to develop them, and not just on the football field, but off the field as well. Brian understands that. His background coming with me, starting at Grand Valley State, but before that, being a high school coach, makes him uniquely qualified to understand player development, being at the high school ranks, being in Division II, at Georgia Southern as a head football coach, being in the SEC, obviously being in the NFL. Understanding player development was huge in the selection of the defensive coordinator here. His experience, let's understand that. We're at the University of Notre Dame. We're playing for championships. And so the defensive coordinator needed to have that experience. Brian has that national experience. He's a two-time Broyles Award winner for the finest assistant coach in the country. So he has that resume, has that experience as a defensive coordinator in the SEC, and he's also sharpened the iron in the NFL as well, in building that experience. He understands Notre Dame and understands the unique qualities that we have here, and that you're shopping down a different aisle here at Notre Dame. And he'll understand that and has understood that, you know, knowing Notre Dame, just being up the road in Michigan and growing up in Michigan, he knows about Notre Dame and the qualities that we have here. And then finally, in putting together a staff, I want to be around people that I enjoy being around. Brian is the right fit for me and this staff. And I think when you put all those qualities together, this is an incredibly gifted teacher, educator, and the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, and we're lucky to have him. So with that, I want to introduce the new defensive coordinator here at Notre Dame, Brian VanGorder.
Thank you, Brian, and welcome everyone. It's a great crowd here today, and I'd like to start by thanking Brian and Jack and Father Jenkins for making this transition for me one that's been real enjoyable as I step into a special place. And being a Michigan kid, growing up watching Bo Schembechler and Ara Parsegian, and understanding the traditions of those places here in the Midwest, I've got just so much pride in the fact that I'm standing here today and a part of Notre Dame. I'm old enough now where coming here I can really indulge myself in all the traditions and the respects of this place, and certainly want to honor it with everything I do as a football coach and as a member of this community. So I really am excited about that. I look forward to the many challenges that lie ahead as we evaluate right now our defense, and we finish out this recruiting season. Having spent time, a little bit of time anyway, with the staff. It's a fine staff, and just really look forward to that part of it as we begin to develop here during the off season and schematically build our philosophy and what we want to do. It's been really interesting in my career at my age and where I've been, and thinking back that when I entered college football after being a head high school coach for 7 years down in South Florida. In 1989, I went to Grand Valley State, and Brian and I were together there. And it's not just Brian and myself, but just a lot of guys that were a part of Grand Valley, and then later going to Wayne State, and watching how our careers, have kind of gone, and really how lucky and blessed many of us have been. But I've really enjoyed watching Brian and the success that he's had. And the one thing I really look forward to are the already established standards and expectations here of Notre Dame and the football program, and certainly the enthusiasm that he has brought to Notre Dame and that I'm going to be a part of. So really look forward to that culture. And for many years I've thought, as I admired Brian as he continually advanced, that maybe someday we'd get back together. And we had such a great time the first time around and at Grand Valley, and I hope that we can do the same thing, and I'm sure we will here at Notre Dame. So again, it's an honor to be here, and at this point in time, I'll open it up to any kind of questions you guys have. That's it?
Yeah, when you guys ask your questions, if you could just include your name and affiliation so Brian can get to meet you.
Hey, Brian, Pete Byrne, WSBT, CBS Television. What is it about your past experience coaching with Brian Kelly that you appreciate or that drew you to being interested in this position here?
Hi, Pete. Well, I think that, again, my first college experience with Brian, we went 11-0, and we lost in the first round of the playoffs. And that, again, that for my first time around in college football was nothing but just, great memories. And the 3 years that we spent together involved a lot of success, and then it evolved a head coach leaving and Brian becoming the head coach and then moving me into the defensive coordinator position. So we worked really well together. I think that our players reflected that as you watch them play. And I just think that we have, personalities that worked well together, and anticipate that's remained the same, and we'll enjoy that same kind of relationship here at Notre Dame.
If it's possible to answer this briefly, how would you evaluate the type of defense you intend to run here?
Well, I think that's a good question, but at the same time, it's kind of a hard question to answer, just because I've been a part of so much. So I've got those things that kind of hold my philosophy together, but I think that my experience tells me to always do a good job evaluating the current talent, the current players, and then make decisions that best play to their strengths. So that's the process that we'll be in right now. I think that no matter what you run schematically, the idea of our players' enthusiasm for what they're doing and their standards and expectations are relative to whatever we do, whether it's 4-3-3, 4, all those kinds of things that we like to talk about.
Brian, Adam Shear, Fox 28.
Hey, Adam.
I guess my main question is, why leave the NFL when you could have established yourself maybe a little bit more in that capacity?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I think there's a lot of questions in regards to you look at my resume relative to that. I hear that all the time, but I was very happy in Atlanta as the defensive coordinator with Mike Smith, and I just made a decision at that time to go back into the college game relative to what I considered a very a top program in the country, and an opportunity that my sons were going to be with me for at least 6 years, and that was kind of obviously a very important thing at the time. And so anyway, we decided to go ahead and make that move, and unfortunately that didn't work out, and then I'm with the New York Jets, and now here. So the decision was based on longevity. It wasn't about what happened, but we all know there's no crystal ball to look into and know exactly what's going to happen. So you try to make good judgment based on the resume of a place or a person, and trust that it's going to work out. That one didn't. So
Obviously, you're coming into a situation with a solid foundation. What do you like about maybe the talent that you have seen so far here?
Well, again, when I put the film on, I like our players' intensity. You can see their body language and enthusiasm. They're all in, and so that's the most important thing as you build scheme and all those things moving forward. But that's what I like. I like their enthusiasm and their commitment to excellence, and they represent Notre Dame. So that's the way it should be.
Coach, Al Lessar with the South Bend Tribune.
Hi, Al.
In terms of your personality, how has it been going from the NFL to college to the NFL? You know, how have you adjusted your personality, and how have you handled that dealing with those types of different types of players?
Yeah, good question. I remember when I went into the NFL to Jacksonville, and a lot of people, kind of wondered how will Brian do working into the NFL with his personality and with his style. And I kind of avoided for a couple years. I had a few calls of interest, and I kind of, held off. But when I finally did it, I had a middle linebacker named Mike Peterson, and I was coming from Georgia, and he was a Florida Gator. So that kind of engaged some interesting conversation in itself. But I think he'd been in the league some 9 years at the time, and I was out amongst the guys during flex, and I was clapping my hands, and I was like, let's go, we're going to do, and he said, hey, rookie, this is a marathon. And literally that's how the NFL player saw it, was, this 16-game schedule and 4 preseason games, and he was going, hey, it's a long way before we get there. So, he kind of was telling me, like, slow down a little bit. And that might have helped a little, but I really found that in the NFL, you're just dealing with players that have more experience in the game, so their overall intellect of the game is a little bit different than the college player. And again, it's really based on the experience that they've had. But in both cases, the idea of development, which favors the college player, has always been my desire as a coach. So it doesn't matter that he was a 9-year veteran. I still was trying to work, might not have been as great a development, to develop him into the best player I could on a Sunday. A Curtis Lofton, a rookie into the NFL, total development into a pro player, and again, a college player, feeding them the information and giving them all the things that physically are going to help them become the best that they can be is really, there's even more room for that, and it's more enjoyable for someone of my personality. So, I'm looking forward to that. And when you think about a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid becoming a 22, 23-year-old player, and the growth that he can have over those years, it's vital that we do the right things and provide that for him, and I really enjoy that.
Brian.
Okay.
Pete Sampson from Irish Illustrated. Just throughout your career, whether those are playing days at Wayne State, high school coaching, college coaching, pros, who are maybe some of the biggest influences on your coaching style and your philosophy that's gotten you to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of, what I represented as a coach, when you talk about the integrity of our profession and stuff, came from my college coach, Dick Lowry, who is a Hall of Fame coach, but he recruited me out of high school, and then I had him at Wayne State University, and his staff really reflected all of those things as a youngster, as a player, and I've tried to, stay close to all of those things. As I moved on, kind of interesting, but when I became the head coach at Wayne State University, I spent a bunch of time down at University of Michigan, and Cam Cameron was the offensive coordinator then. Les Miles was the offensive line coach, and I really was diligent in terms of learning offense. When I became a head coach, I wanted to learn more about offense, and that growth there was, really, really tremendous for me during that time. And then I spent some great time down at Ohio State with Fred Puggich at the time, and Fred later went to the NFL and picked up a lot of the things philosophically that we began to do. But I really think that when I left the University of Georgia and went to the NFL with Jack Del Rio and Mike Smith, I think, they opened a door to so much more respective to the game and the intellectual part of the game. And, whatever it's been now, 7-8 years, over the last 7-8 years, the growth in that area, I think was a good combination for my personality and probably the most important years for me professionally.
And you mentioned sort of in your opening, at this point in your career, how do you sort of define this point in your career? Do you sort of look at yourself as more of a college coach moving forward, or how do you see?
No, I just, I've always considered myself a coach. And, Brian mentioned I started as a high school coach into Division II, 1AA, into Division I, into the NFL, went back to college, back to the NFL. So, I'm a football coach. What's important to me now is the people that I work with, that the culture is one that is comfortable and it shares some of those things that are of the fabric of who I am. The culture's right, the standards and expectations are in line, and the mission is clear, That's really what I'm looking for. So the opportunity to be here with Brian and to be at Notre Dame just make it all that much more special.
Thanks.
Coach, over here, Eric Hansen, South Bend Tribune.
Hi, Eric.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. Hey, I'm curious, your year with Rex Ryan, what you were able to glean from that, and do you feel like there are concepts that you can pull from that experience that will help you as a college coach?
Oh, absolutely. I think this last year in, deciding to go back into the NFL and catch on with Rex has been a real blessing for me. He's, Rex is different than the coaches and different than myself in terms of his approach and, how he sees the game, and ultimately, schematically, how he works and coaches a game. And I think it was invaluable for me, who's really tied into, again, some core things, to really open my eyes again to somebody that's really unique in the business. He's very natural in who he is. I think he sees the game, again, differently, and therefore he's created some things from a schematic standpoint that are problematic for offensive coaches. A lot of them just, they don't like the idea of running their offense against Rex because it's challenging. So it was interesting because all the years as a coordinator and now going back to a linebacker coach to watch Rex install and talk his defense, and how my mind was always working in respects to, okay, when I'm a coordinator again, how am I going to take these things that Rex is doing that I really like and incorporate them into this solid system that I've been a part of for so many years. So I was already, thinking ahead and planning ahead in respects to the many things that I'll take from the New York Jets and from Rex. So it was a great influence.
Your style with players, college players, how would you describe it? Are you loud? Are you laid back? Somewhere in between?
I've always likened, coaching, especially college players, similar to, raising kids and my own kids. I think that, again, high standards and expectations bring about intense moments. And, the players will get that with me when it's called for. When it's time to do business, it's time to do business. My expectations are that people are dialed in and focused on the task at hand. But, when it's time to have fun, it's time to have fun. And I think, you have to do that. And, we want to drive them hard, but we really want them to know while we're doing that we care about them. And that's why, I kind of relate that to, raising our children, that we discipline them, but it's important that they always know, how much we love and care about them. And I think that's really, one of the secrets of coaching And it's at least how I've always, kind of worked. But, we're going to work them hard, and we're going to expect that they want to be the best that they can be, and we want to provide every opportunity to do that. And again, there's going to be ebbs and flows and times when, they're going to feel uncomfortable. And certainly we want them to find time to know that we care about them and they can enjoy their Notre Dame experience.
I imagine this one's tough because you're still evaluating the players and so forth, but just in a general terms, what's important to you from kind of a metric standpoint? Stopping the run, bringing pressures, mixing things up. What's kind of your base philosophy?
Yeah, well, again, I'm built, to stop the run, and I think if you look at my record, that you'll find that most of the time our defenses have been very solid, including in the NFL against the run. I think this last year with the Jets, they were 28th the year before against the rush, and I think this year, well, I know this year, at least rush average per carry, we led the NFL, and for the most part, we were way ahead at one point in time. So I think that part of it for me is all about, your toughness. There's something about when a team can run the ball on you in our game, there's something about the toughness factor that affects me and how I feel about it. Now, the other part of me knows that as the passing game has grown, it's obvious that that's the first place where explosive plays and scoring is going to happen fast. So normally you don't feel that fast progression in the run game as much as a quick 60-yard pass will equal score. So you got to stop explosive plays through the air. That's imperative. I think in today's game, your ability to mix your coverages, your looks, and all those things have become more and more important. And then the pressure part of it that you spoke of, again, I like pressure, but that's relative to so many things. And a lot of times people don't understand that. But that starts with when we pressure and we're going to play man coverage in behind it, who's in the man coverage? Is that a strength for a particular player, or what's the matchup in that situation? So again, ideally, I'd like to think of myself as a coach that likes pressure, but first and foremost, again, I want to find the strengths and play to those strengths of a player, and we'll find out what that is, at Notre Dame. So not a very good answer, was it?
Up here, Brian. Tim Priester from Irish Illustrated.
Hi, Tim.
How are you? Welcome to South Bend.
Thank you.
How much contact, have you stayed in constant contact with Coach Kelly through the years, and did your conversations ever get as serious as these conversations got?
Well, no. Our conversations have never involved a job opportunity with Brian, but certainly we've shared time together, and I would say probably less and less over the last 5-6 years, because we've both been evolving in rather high-profile jobs, and both very busy. But we've never hesitated to pick up the phone, whether it's a question about something in football or it was a job question, in consideration. So I think we've always maintained a real healthy respect for one another, and certainly a desire to talk over any issues in our careers relative to being colleagues.
And how often have you been to Notre Dame in the past?
Well, interestingly, I was here a couple times with the Atlanta Falcons working out players. And the interesting part of it was when we were at Grand Valley after our second year, Tom Beck, who was the head coach, he came to Notre Dame as a running back coach. And Brian and the staff, we all came down here for a spring practice and spent the day. And I remember how incredible it was, and how excited Tom was. So I'll never forget that day. And so, I've been here 3 or 4 times, and it's just a great place. You feel it when you walk in.
Any advantages, I know you don't want to say that there are coming from the NFL, but but coaching on that level, obviously the highest level,
Yeah.
are there any advantages to be derived in coming to the college game?
Oh, I think so. I think so. I mean, again, in all fairness, you think about our college job description, and we all know that includes a lot of recruiting and time on the road. And you think of the NFL, you don't do that. So, you come to work, and at 8 o'clock, you put the film on and you start, quality controlling and studying football, until 4 or 5 o'clock. And so that's your life. So you get to dissect and digest. And so it gives you the opportunity, I think, to really develop in the game differently, and prepares you for a lot of things. That's in general, Again, it still comes back to, what a coach can take in and how fast he can grasp concepts and such. So, but at least offers, I think, the opportunity to learn more about our game. Again, it doesn't guarantee anything, but I think the opportunity's there.
It appears that you've always you've always preferred to coach from the sideline as a
Yes.
coordinator. Why is that, and will you continue to do that?
I don't know. It just, that's just what I did from the beginning. Maybe when I started there, maybe the press box couldn't fit, but I don't know. But that's just kind of the way it's been. And for the most part, when I was a younger coach, I was the more maybe emotional coach and a little bit more outspoken and such, and felt like, as the leader of a group, that I needed to be there, with them. I don't know how I feel about that now. I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel up in a booth looking down on a game, because it's just not been a part of what I've ever done. So.
Never spent any time in a booth in any
You know what, I
capacity?
did one year when I went to the Atlanta Falcons. I was a linebacker coach, and I was upstairs that year. That's the only time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan over here, Tom Coyne, Associated Press.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, first gained acclaim at Georgia, obviously, when won the Broyles and all that. How has the game changed? Being in the NFL, you come back and forth, but seeing it, how is the college game different from back then, do you think?
I think there's I would say today that there's more of the quarterback running game. It's more widespread now. When I went into the SEC, for instance, Coach Holtz was at South Carolina, and we were seeing a lot of what we're seeing today from South Carolina. So it wasn't new to us, or new to me in respects to it. And then then that kind of Wildcat series started taking off, and defensively we were trying to kind of catch up with some of that was going on. And that's kind of what you're seeing more of, that Wildcat series, but now it's a quarterback that can run the ball with the threat of the pass, and it's changed the numbers. It's changed the numbers in terms of how we see it as a defensive coach, and it naturally creates problems. Now, we've been seeing it grow in the NFL. So, in the NFL, the coaches are having to deal with it, even though it's going to be, you're just not going to see as much because of the contact on the quarterback. You won't see anybody just live with that. But so that's changed, kind of almost a single wing kind of idea. I hate to call it that because, the passing game off it can be very effective. But I think that's changed somewhat. I can't, the passing game, remember when I was in the SEC, when I went in, Eli Manning was he was the coach or the quarterback at Ole Miss, and Cutler was at, Vanderbilt, and Lorenzen down at Kentucky, all NFL, NFL guys. So, a good passing game, I was seeing that, years ago. But I just think this this what everybody terms as a spread offense with the quarterback's ability to run the ball is, it's changed. And really, I should say this in respect to all defensive coaches, I think that the tempo game, has changed how we see defense and how we evaluate a defensive staff, because, we're seeing ourselves now defend some 85, 90 plays in games, so that's changed. And, if you're a defensive coach and your offense is no huddle, you better get ready for that. So you got to plan way ahead in respects to, the depth of your team and all those things that make sense for success.
Guess it's me. Coach J.J. Stankovitz, Comcast Sportsnet.
Hi, Jay.
Just when you came to Auburn after spending all those years with the Falcons, was there anything you noticed specifically about your coaching style or maybe even your recruiting style that had been colored because you had spent those years in the NFL and sort of knew, what it took to make it in the NFL? Like specifically when you went to coach up a player, was there anything specific, that you said, hey, this worked in the NFL, this is something?
No, not really, because I'm all about, I love evaluation of players, and I love looking at a player and really finding out what that player can do, and then finding ways within the knowledge of scheme to take advantage of that. As far as the recruiting goes, I think that, the resume and the experience was a great asset for me to talk to guys, and they know that they're going to get NFL terminology and language and a system of the NFL, and I found that to be extremely, extremely positive. So no, I didn't feel anything in regards to that.
No, it's still real early on in your evaluation of players, but a guy like Jaylon Smith, the kind of talent he has, have you seen anything out of him already on film that you're excited about?
Again, it's too early for me to really, comment on that. I am looking at some specifics, but it's too early right now. I'm trying to get an overall feel for the guys. I'm trying to learn their names and do some of that, but, it's probably too early and not fair to anybody to make any kind of comment in regards to him.
Hi, Coach. To your right. Lou Simoji with Blue and Gold Illustrated.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. Regarding just getting back into the recruiting aspect of the business, there are a lot of coaches often leave for the NFL because they want to get away from recruiting. What was your experience like, and has there been anything defined for you yet, whether it's geographically or what your territory might be?
No, not yet. And we're at the end of the recruiting, so a lot of things are in place right now too. So I don't think there's a real need for that, at this time. But I think that Notre Dame will be a special place to recruit. I think that the type of student athlete that automatically has an interest in Notre Dame may be profiled a little bit different, and I certainly look forward to that. But having 5 children myself and having 3 of them in college, I certainly know what's going on there. So, as a coach in recruiting, you're trying to, for a set of parents and for a youngster, to try to help them, see what's really real about all of this, and try to paint a picture for them 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And I enjoyed doing that, with parents and with the high school kids. And that's how I found myself kind of, working it, is just adding some experience and hopefully a little wisdom in respects to, having kids in that situation who are athletes and such. And, so, and it's interesting you say about, coaches getting away from college, but really there's a lot of NFL coaches now that have gone back to college. So, again, coaches are coaches. You just enjoy coaching, and that's how most of us, will see it. But I see recruiting as exciting, not as something negative.
And just to follow up on your role, having been mainly on the sideline, have you expressed that you would prefer to be on the sideline as the coordinator?
No, we've not talked about anything like that. It's just too early for that.
Do you just believe your personality is maybe better suited to be on the field with the players in the midst of the action?
Maybe, but you know, my mind tells me let's do a thorough evaluation of everything, and then let's make the best decisions for Notre Dame football. We'll see what that equals.
Thank you.
Coach Sean Mealy, Irish Sports Daily.
The Sean Mealy?
I'm afraid so, Coach.
Hi, Sean. How you doing?
Doing well.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. In regard to having experience installing defenses in the NFL and installing defenses in college, I mean, do you have a general set plan in the spring where you say, okay, day one this, day two this, or do you just kind of see how the players pick it up and then go from there?
Yeah, definitely, Sean. I mean, one of the things that when I went into the NFL, Jack Del Rio and Mike Smith, John Fox before them, Brian Billick before them, that was kind of their football family. That was all a spinoff of Bill Walsh. And so how you quality control and you build a yearly calendar, man, we had it right down to the amount of reps that we were going to get during, an OTA, and then all the situational football things that were already done, for the year, all the way through training camp. And that's kind of how I'm built as I look at it. And again, it's another great way just to make sure that you cover all your bases in respects to the game. And, when a particular situation comes up, everybody's comfortable knowing that, hey, we've done that, we've worked that, we understand that as coaches and players. So it's a part of the game I really, really enjoy. So yeah, but again, we've got to do some evaluation right now, coaches, personnel, and then Sean, we can set that kind of thing, set that thing up. But yeah, it'll be day one of spring ball, right through the end, and then right into training camp in terms of having it all set up, installs, the whole thing.
Hi, Brian. Andrew Owens from Blue and Gold Illustrated. I was wondering, during the interview process, did Brian talk to you at all about your backgrounds with linebackers, considering Notre Dame has not many inside linebackers returning next year?
The Notre Dame's linebackers what?
There aren't many inside linebackers returning next season. Did he emphasize your background in linebackers as a big reason to bring you here?
No, we didn't really talk about that.
And I was wondering, too, your two head coaching experiences, what have you drawn from that, and how has that molded you as a coordinator?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a very interesting question. When I took the head job at Wayne State University, probably one of the most valuable things that I did, because we had a program that actually the president at the time had tried to drop football at Wayne State. So it was a fundraising program, and we were competing with 11 scholarships. And I believe that everybody else had like 36 at the time. And I didn't have any full-time coaches, so I had like, what do we call them then? Restricted earnings, but it was a blast. And you had to learn how to really manage a game, in games for the most part that you were mismatched in terms of personnel. And you had to really build a certain pride about who we were and what we represented to, overachieve. And we were able to do that at Wayne State. I think we had the first winning season in some 20-some years there since the football program had been cut. And so, I love those guys. Those guys were like really, really special to me. We had an unbelievable thing going on, but I really learned how to manage a game, which is kind of funny because then so get into the fourth quarter, and give ourselves a chance to win. Funny that I get into the NFL and somewhere around 50% of the games come down to the last drive of the fourth quarter. It's like, so the management of game and such is like so critical, and I learned that a long time ago. Georgia Southern was a completely different deal. And I gained a total respect for, the idea of really what it takes. So a lot of coaches think, hey, I'll take that job and I'll turn that thing and it'll, and in some cases, maybe there's some truth to that. But when you take a place like Georgia Southern, that was a triple option team, and say, we're going to go pro style, and the pieces of position profiles just don't fit, they don't work. Man, you talk about a transition that's nearly impossible. And, but to go through something like that, and a group of kids and the coaches, like, I know people say, oh, we stuck together. Well, I'm telling you, this group stuck together. They were great coaches. Those coaches are in the NFL, some of them now. I had a great coaching staff, and I know that, you know, some people were really disappointed in that event. I'm not, as I look back on it. It's another opportunity to learn, and, you know, hey, it's an event that you gain experience through, and you either choose to learn from it or you despise it. And I've always chosen to learn from all those kinds of things.
Hi, Matt Fortuna from ESPN.com.
Hey, Matt.
Just you talked about coming here as an assistant and with the Falcons and at other stops. Just curious, being a Midwest kid, what were your memories of Notre Dame just growing up on TV and maybe even coming over here?
Oh, wow. Well, I remember, the thing I remember first of all was when Coach Holtz was here, and you know, Tony Rice and Jerome Bettis, and you know, the national championship group. That's kind of what I really, you know, his style of offense. You know, I remember when Rick Minner was here. You know, I remember spending a lot of time with Rick and some of the things that he was doing as a defensive coordinator, and Ron Cooper, and I remember, you know, the offensive and defensive lines were really impressive when I would watch Notre Dame, especially the offensive line. You know, but you know, seeing touchdown Jesus over the stadium and the Golden Dome, and you know, again, all the legendary coaches with Newt Rockne and you know, right up through era, and then Lou at the time doing what he was doing. It was just the fight song. Just there's just so many. You know, it's hard to you grew up knowing it was a special place, different than the other places.
Going back a couple weeks, just curious, what did gain to probably see this operation up close in New York for the Pinstripe Bowl? How'd that kind of help sell you on making the move here?
Seeing the Pinstripe Bowl?
No, it's just seeing I mean, they were at the Jets facility, I believe, when they were in New
Yes.
York. I mean, did you get to spend some time around the program?
No, I could not.
Okay.
You know, according to NCAA and NFL agreement, you know, we couldn't watch practice or do any of that.
Okay. And obviously your relationship and history with Coach Kelly is pretty well documented. Just curious what your relationship or past is like with any other members on the staff.
Well, you know, Paul Longo, the strength coach, was one of my best friends in college. We played college football together. You know, Mike Denbrock came to Grand Valley after I left, so there was you know, I'd still go back over there and see Mike. I met Mike Elston when he was at University of Michigan. So you know, I've met those guys in the past and been around them. I met Kerry Woods many years ago, and through our mutual friends and such. So we know of each other. You know, it's not unfamiliar grounds, but a lot of work there. You know, in terms of developing our relationships in the football world.
Thank you.
We good? All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks again for being here.